Yeah, and that had to do because, like I said, he's telling you the facts. I've been fighting my computer like crazy. I don't know what's going on with it, and it's just been a real pain and a tiff on this one. So I got to get another one apparently because I don't get what's going on with this one. So anyhow, it's been too much fun. So go ahead and finish what you were saying. Okay. Anyhow, we would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We are not lawyers, attorneys. We are just men and women of the soil. We do education of the Constitution, and that is the point that we've got to start standing up for this and realizing what the Constitution means and what it really is compared to the fantasy people are dealing with. That's why we're starting this series, the first through the 27 amendments. And we'll go through what has been lawfully passed and what has been legally passed. So that way people comprehend what's lawful and legal of the Constitution amendments. And so we'll be getting that. It's like the 13th and 14th Amendment, and people don't even comprehend that because they don't even know it. The 13th Amendment was passed and ratified. So attorneys, lawyers, and all that are not participants in our legal system. The 14th Amendment was passed by administration because they couldn't get it ratified because of the democratic democracy of the devil people. And so they passed it through administrative rule. And so that's the one thing we'll be getting that on the 14th week on Sunday. So people comprehend what the 14th, the 13th Amendment really is compared to what they think that it is. But anyhow, this evening we're going to be going through the First Amendment, dealing with freedom of speech, freedom of words, because we've got freedom of speech has been so tampered by democracy that if you say certain words, you go to jail. And it's like freedom of speech doesn't mean, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. When are the children going to grow up? That offended me. Well, those people say it offended me. Those are the people who offend me because all they're doing it is to shut people up, especially like the American Civil Liberties Union. And remember, they don't work for you. American Civil Liberties Union was founded by, the Bar Association to protect the immigration as well, because immigration, they make a lot of money. And you got all these immigrants out there yelling and screaming, we got freedom of speech rights, we got rights. Hell no. Immigration, you have no rights until you're fifth generation. That's the law. And see, when these people are out there whining and crying at immigration, and saying that they have these rights, they are privileged people. Literally privileged people. And so it is just really pisses me off when people do this stuff and people say that these men and women have rights when they don't have rights. And I've been on the deal. I was on for 2 hours this morning from 2 until 4, going back and forth with these immigrants who are saying they have these rights. I'm putting laws up. They're starting to say, well, First Amendment, religion. Oh, religion. No, excuse me. If you actually read state and federal law and the Constitution, what is that? Separation from state and church. Church has nothing to do with the Constitution except that you have the right to free religion, freedom of religion, freedom for religion. But I don't care about your religion. I don't want to hear your religion. My religion is the Constitution. My religion has teeth in it. My religion is the law. Your religion is a book that's telling you how to live with guilt if you do this or that wrong. The Constitution has that religion I believe in. Oh, what is that? That has, what is that called? Circumstances and consequences. All right? Religion doesn't have consequences. I mean, look at what's going on with the church. Pastors, preachers, Vatican people, popes are raping little children, executing them. I mean, the videos are up on YouTube video. I mean, they've even put up some of the videos that were taken down with the religious people doing sacrification. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people do not get what's going on in this country and excuse me, and the world. And so when these people say that they have rights, they don't have rights. And that's the one thing that we have to sit there and enforce that, because it's our responsibility to protect our children, our country, our bloodline. Because remember, these men and women don't give a damn about bloodline. Especially religion believes that everybody should come to America. They have a right to free food, free jobs, to be put you enslaved, to put you in debt, to cause the issues with you. And it's not a fact. That's not true. So when these people get away with using the First Amendment or their religion against us is BS. Because the one thing is, religion is a privilege under the Constitution. You can't sit there and put it in the Oregon State House and Senate or Florida House and Senate. You can't put it in Arkansas, Arizona. You know, and if you go to Arkansas, oh my God, they got the devil statue right in front of the courthouses now, including right in front of the Capitol. And people don't get it. They just allow this stuff. They accept this stuff. You know, but they'll take down the statutes from the Civil War, but they put up the devil statutes so that way the devil is running the structure. You know, and they put up Muslim statues or mosques. You know, and mosques shouldn't even be allowed in this country because Muslims are not allowed in this country, and that goes back to Thomas Jefferson when that was formed, because the Marines and the Navy was formed to go after Muslims because all they do is rape, rob, and murder, and everybody knows it. It is not an isolated situation. See, it disturbs me when people think that things are isolated or things are just not the way what people think they are, and they're not. And so when we sit there and put all these stuff out there and we put these problems out there and people don't sit there and stand up for their bloodline, they don't stand up for their children, and then they want to whine, cry, and they want to bitch. I mean, for example, all these people are bitching because, they're getting shipped home and they're separating fathers and mothers and children. Well, sorry, go to your country. We didn't invite you. Trust me, the natives never invited people. They just came up and came on the shore, started rape, robbing, and murdering. And that hasn't changed at all in the last, but that's acceptable. That gets covered up by realize that people lie to their own children, and that's the saddest part. And they lie about the First Amendment, about freedom of religion, because you have the right to religion. You have the right to religion in your home and in your church, not on the street corner. But everybody goes, well, that's my freedom of speech. That gives me the right to freedom of speech. Okay. I have the freedom of speech to tell you to take a flying hike. And then you sit there and then you go after me for using words that you don't like because you call them curse words. And to a lot of other men and women, that's not curse words. That's the way they talk. You know, I don't talk that way, but a lot of men and women do talk that way. And so when it comes down to those things, who's right, who's wrong? It comes down to the Constitution gives you the right of freedom of religion. All right? Like I said, my religion is the Constitution. That's my Bible. I don't believe in any other religion because all those religions came from foreign countries, literally foreign countries. And so now we got foreigners dictating to us. They've convinced so many people to go along with their foreign beliefs. And that's the problems that we have today. I mean, everybody has that problem today because we got so many religions in this country that is dictating to people how to live under their beliefs and their foreign standards, their foreign structure. And we're not supposed to be living that way. Why are we doing that? Why are we doing this to the children? So this is the one thing that is so disturbing, that people get away with this stuff, and they're doing it to their children. And so when we start working together to properly educate, and I thank everybody who's doing that, we are all working on that. We're all getting it done. We are producing the evidence, and we're producing the facts and the truth out there. And so these men and women are getting upset and because they don't want their religious beliefs to be cornered. Well, it's like freedom of speech has already been so tampered with. Because if you say certain words, oh my God, you get a federal complaint against you, or the cop will arrest you for saying certain words because it might offend somebody. Well, if it offends somebody and you are such a little boy and a little girl and you're a child and you have no comprehension of reality of your own world, because what about being an adult? What about not sitting there taking the responsibility? That's like everybody with the drug and alcohol programs. I'm a drug addict and everybody wants to whine and cry. Well, shit, in the old days is only 30 years ago, people would turn their back. They would shut their door, including if it was family and friends. Instead of today, the Democrats who own these alcohol and drug programs are making all the money because, oh, we got to feel guilty for it because freedom of religion says that these people need to be forgiven for their crimes and the harm they've done to other people. Turn the other cheek. Sorry, I don't turn the other cheek. Well, maybe I do with a right or left cross. But I'm not going to turn the other cheek and just say it's acceptable because they have to make pendants by their own book. They have to make an amends by their own book. And see, that is the point that is so frustrating today. And I'm still having problems with my damn computer. That's the problem, that these men and women do this and they put guilt on people. Well, guilt sucks. Don't tolerate it. When people try to put guilt on me, I tell them guilt sucks and go shove it. Oh, you're not Christian. No, I'm not. Christian is not American. It came from a foreign country. Read your history. It comes from England, the devil country, the Vatican, religion control. That's why when you register as a nonprofit for your freedom of speech, you get a tax credit. Everybody has to register if they are a reverend, minister. Trust me, the ministers and reverends will lie to you. Trust me, I'm an ordained minister. I've been there, done it, know it. So when these people, I did things in life to go prove that what I do is real instead of just doing hearsay. So when these men and women sit there and try to give you guilt and complexes and try to tell you how to live, that's where we got to stop this. We really got to stop this. Oh, God damn it. Sorry for the language. My pointer just froze again. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we could even play hearsay bullshit on that one. So, anyhow, because I slipped my tongue. Yeah.
Hearsay bullshit. Hearsay
yeah,
bullshit.
I know, because I've done that. And a couple people have had, I've gone off a couple times. But anyhow, it's one of those things that when you go through these circumstances, and we all go through these things. So that is the one thing, when we stop doing this to one another, we stop assaulting each other by the administrative system called police departments, because everybody goes, oh, well, we have these rights. Well, yes, you do have the right, so long as you're a lawful bloodline native. But if you're an immigrant, it's privileges. And I'm glad to see a lot of these new videos coming up from a lot of different men and women, stating this, including professional men and women that are bringing this fact out. And so it is one of those things that people are bringing the truth out, bringing the facts out. And so this is how we start surviving, by honesty, truth, not lying to ourselves and our children, not coming up with these new words and these fake words like even transgender. You know, what the heck is that? That's just another tax write-off for doctors and lawyers and everybody else to make a buck. So people don't get it because most people don't comprehend the real truth. And that is the sad part that we're living with the First Amendment all the way. Because it's supposed to be separated from church and state. So church is not supposed to have anything to do in our House, Senate, Congress at all. Religion is not supposed to have anything to do with that at all. But a lot of people are convinced. I've been watching these videos that are saying, oh, under First Amendment right, the government should be doing what the church tells them. And these videos piss me off when they do this stuff. It really pisses me off when they do that because they lie to the general public. Because the churches don't have a right to tell you a thing. And especially religion churches don't have a right to tell you a damn thing. Any religion church. They have a right to their freedom of speech in the church. They shouldn't have it on TV, to tell you the truth. But see, they like it on TV because it's a financial income for Turner and everybody else that makes a living off of it. And so when they're sitting there paying the circumstances, when they do this to you and I, and exactly what they do to you and I. And so that's one thing that people don't get the point when it comes down to this factor. And so when they do this, they convince their kids to lie, cheat, and steal that it's acceptable. And so when people do this and they do that to their children, that's the problems we are living right now today that is putting us in these binds. And so when they do that to us, saying that, oh, you said a wrong word. I mean, it's like everybody goes, the N-word, you can't say it because it might offend. Well, if you actually look up the definition of the N-word, you might be surprised what the real truth is. It was never a color issue. It states that a guy is either mentally retarded, he's slow, he doesn't get things, he doesn't have the brain capacity to think past 12. And so when you do that, and just because these men and women take it personal because they're trying to relate it into that so that way they can make extra income by suing you. And that's what it really comes down to. So they could sue you to make financial income. These men and women don't give a damn. And once these people, you start figuring this out, like a lot of us are doing, and we're filing on these public servants, and things are changing. Things are happening. It is working. And we are making changes. I mean, you can see it what's been passing by administrative rules in the House and Senate and stuff like this. It's a real fact. So we need to keep moving on this. But when you do this stuff and go say that my right is more important than your right, my religious belief, I mean, that's like the guy in Colorado would piss me off about him. I talked to him on the phone a couple times, and he's like, don't tell me, call my attorney and stuff. And I said, I can't call your attorney. I don't deal with devil people. What do you mean? And it's like, man, either you don't know what an attorney is, you don't know the history, you don't even comprehend what reality is, apparently. And he got offended by some of the things I said, and it's like, well, dude, I'm sorry you got offended. You take it personal. That's not my problem. But he should have went through, and his court case should have been stating right off the bat, that they violated his, what was it? His right to do business. Not his religious right, his Constitution right of freedom of the press and business. So you go after religion, and that's why everybody keeps going, the court cases, these judges, they have difficulty doing some of this stuff. And that's the point that you got to realize. These judges don't have the authority that you really think they do. And that's the one thing we're going to be talking about through other amendments coming up in a week, so I can actually walk it through with you folks. And others will speak up, probably on the education show here as well for others. But this is the point. We're supposed to be educating each other, not arguing, not fighting about somebody's belief. And you don't believe what I believe, so that's wrong. and you don't believe in this religion, and so that's wrong. I mean, realistically, how many religions we got on this in the 48 states? What, over 100 religions? You know, I'll really do the research. We got well over 100 religions on the 48 states. I mean, you got some people that even have religions that worship trees, and they have that filed as a religious right. And so that is the stuff that just drives me nuts when people don't get the circumstances, are not paying attention to these things. And so when you're not paying attention to these things, this is how these Democrats end up screwing us and get away with all the crap they're getting away with and harming our children, harming our friends and neighbors. So when you start standing up on these issues and you start comprehending this and we're working together, because your First Amendment right gives you the right of freedom of speech. If somebody doesn't like it, screw them. It does. Also, too, the First Amendment gives you the right to audio and videotape the courts. It gives you the right to audio and videotape public servants, cops. Supreme Court has decided this. And that's one thing. I was going to try to get a couple of those videos up. And I was going to try to get one video up where actual sheriff defended the constitutional right and told another public servant basically to go to hell, and if you keep it up, I'm going to arrest you. Yeah? Yeah, we're listening. Right. Mm-hmm. And see, that's the point that we're basically using, because we're freedom of the press in a sense of what we educate with the system. They wrote it, we quote it. And that's the whole point. We want to make sure that you get it, and that is freedom of the press. And once people start accepting all that stuff and start getting that stuff, then we can start changing more and more and more. And a lot of us are getting it. A lot of us are doing that. I mean, it's like I'm waiting for responses right now dealing with the sheriff stuff that I put out, dealing with their structure of their employment. We want to know if they're lawful or legal. We have a right to know if they're lawful or legal. It's not a privilege. These public employees work for you and I. That is the point. They work for we the people. And so when they don't work for we the people, that's your responsibility and my responsibility. That's why I'm putting the stuff out I'm doing right now, because I really want to go after them. So I want them to put their foot in their mouth. I mean, and then once they do that, then I can respond. But until I have a clarification of how to respond, because I need them to respond to me, so I need to know how to respond back to them. And so once I'm able to respond back to them, and we do have this stuff on new.org and trackers, and if you go to the resource pages, you go read what I've served on the sheriffs. So that is my First Amendment right. That is freedom of the press right, because new.org and this channel could be considered that, even though I don't sit there and claim a title of nobility and stuff, because I'm not going to be held liable for the Queen of England's actions or to pay her tax or debt notes. And that's the one thing we'll be getting down the road in the amendments, because it's federally illegal to pay taxes with a federal treasury note. It's a federal crime to exchange it unless you are further down the road. We'll get more and more out and line it up for you. And this is the one thing that when we're sitting there going with the freedom of press, freedom of religion, and I do respect the comment you said, because all these media says, well, we got freedom of press, but then again, if you use their stuff, it's like the legislator. If you actually use their stuff, you could be brought up on copyright charges. They're not going to tell you that until they charge you with what they call a crime. But you are going to be brought up on on charges for copyright issues. And that is the point. How come people do not see this stuff that's going on around them? I guess that's what totally stuns me when it really comes down to this stuff. Because, all of a sudden we got all these men and women going, I got rights. And then you got the immigration people out there. I got rights. I got rights to come in and rape your children, invade your home. Sorry, dude. No, you do not. Or do that, you do not. And if you've been watching the mainstream media, God, almost every day comes up a shooting, and it's all of them are all foreigners. They're all illegal aliens doing this, and they're trying to make a big deal to go after our arms. And it's the foreigners that are doing it that came into this country. And that is the horrifying fact right there. It's foreigners. It's not people that are in this country. These are domestic terrorists and foreign terrorists coming in, and a lot of them came from Obama, the domestic terrorist himself. Oh, the Muslim himself. Jesus, he was trying to put the thing in the Constitution for Muslims' religion to control this country. And people didn't catch that when he was a terrorist at the White House. He wanted to make sure that Muslims ran this country, not we the people. Because remember, he don't care about this country, nor does whatever his guy friend is. You can't sit there and say Michelle is a woman, because you can see her displacement of her body, and when you see some of her dresses that she wears, definitely that is not a woman there. So that is the one thing. It is interesting that people go along with this. And yes, that's right, that was freedom of the speech. Because that is not a woman. So I have freedom of speech to say the truth. How many famous people that came out on, major media that even stated that it was a guy, not a woman. And all of a sudden, all of those people just ended up passing away. I'm trying to remember her name. She went in just for a basic medical exam, and she just died in the doctor's office. Oh, the doctor gave her a shot. Oh, that's right. So the doctor gave her a shot, and so next thing you know, she's not here. So that is the problems that we are living with today. So when we're going through this stuff, we have to start doing it for us. We have to protect us. We have to protect the children. And so we are doing that. And the system is waking up. I wanted to get in. I'm trying to pull up a couple things right now. Hopefully I can do it. But we're trying to get this stuff so that way you comprehend what your rights are. So when you have a First Amendment right, not a privilege, as a lawful bloodline Native American, and that's what you are, if you are 5 or more generations. And that actually is in congressional records and by Supreme Court, and that is the 14th Amendment, if people actually read the 14th Amendment. It's not like the Bible. You do not interpret it. You are not a lawyer. You're not a judge for personal and financial gain to interpret it. And if you are, please leave the hell out of our country. Because we have been watching lawyers and lawyers and judges falling at the wayside. There was another one just convicted for racketeering, fraud, and extortion. And so it is happening. People are setting this up and waking up. They're writing these criminal complaints against these public servants. And that's what needs to be done, these criminal complaints on these public servants. And until you start making the criminal complaints, no wonder your First Amendment rights are violated. See, it's your responsibility. And everybody goes, well, the district attorney is supposed to write the claims. Let me inform you very bluntly. A district attorney, a judge, a police officer cannot put a complaint in or evidence for the individual, because only a lawful bloodline American can actually make a criminal complaint. Immigration cannot make complaints. And that is the one thing that you have to realize, that immigration doesn't have rights. They have privileges of the First Amendment, so long as they're paying their property taxes, their income, and that structure. And so, and that is a fact. You know, that is a true fact. You know, so I mean, and that is a fact that we deal with and live with. And so when it comes down to it, if you want your rights installed, and install them, prove them. And so once you start proving them, we win. And then that way, then it's our job to protect legal immigration. It's our responsibility to protect them, so that way, with the laws, administrative rules, you know, like the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech. So when they become lawful, that they know how to pass down their rights to their children. Their rights to the children. Because that means the children, when they're fifth generation, have rights, not privileges anymore. And so that's the one thing that is the beautiful part of all this stuff that we're doing here, bringing it out to you. That's the beauty of the Constitution. And don't forget the treaties with the natives, because the treaties with the natives are the Constitution and are the law of this soil of the 48 states. So that gives you your rights, not privileges. When you get privileges as a lawful bloodline native, you sign them away. You get a driver's license, you get, you know, whatever it comes down to, you get those things. So you're signing your rights away. And that's the one thing that most people do not comprehend, that they sign their rights away. They make their rights into a privilege. So when you make your rights into a privilege, all right, that's your fault. That's your responsibility to recorrect it. So once you recorrect that, then all of a sudden, you have rights to your children. You have rights, not privileges. And that's what the whole point that we're trying to get most of all people to comprehend, a right versus a privilege. So that's the one thing that you need to comprehend, that your right is not a privilege. And so I do recommend that you file your affidavits, and I do recommend that you sit there and clarify those circumstances. And once you start clarifying those circumstances, you win. And that's what we want to do. So anyhow, I'm going to let this video get on here and play, because I was trying to get another video up, but it just didn't quite happen because my computer was fighting it, and timing just didn't happen. That was just because of what happened in life. So I'll shut up and let the video go, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to open up the floor to people. And we would like to publicly thank him, because we are passing his message along.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. We're continuing with the Constitution for Dummies series, taking a look at the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights because we have run out of articles. So let's take a look at the original language, a few ways that you can remember them, and some historical context of that language throughout American history in like 5 minutes. So students, lifelong learners, cray-cray on the internet, start your engines. That's the engines of learning. Here we go, giddy up. So even before we approach the Bill of Rights and start looking at language, I want to talk about the idea of selective incorporation. It's really important to understand, guys, that the Bill of Rights was written for the federal government, federal law, federal action. The states, in a sense, have their own state constitutions. So it's not going to be until after the 14th Amendment, and there's language in the 14th Amendment, you can click right there and watch my 14th Amendment video, that basically says that the states have to succumb to the Bill of Rights concepts of equal protection and due process. And then throughout the 20th century, the court starts selectively incorporating some of the Bill of Rights to the states.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
So you can see the language is really clear. There's only 44 words in there, guys. And if we look at the very beginning of the First Amendment, we can see the Establishment Clause. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And that language becomes quite interpretable. So what the Supreme Court has done is it's begun to apply, starting in the 1920s, the Bill of Rights to state law. And this blossoms in the Establishment Clause in a case, the Everson decision in 1942. Maybe it's 1947. But either way, what the court basically did was really using some letters that Thomas Jefferson had written to a Baptist association, I believe in Massachusetts, like in 1802, 1803, where he was asked a question about why, as president, he wasn't like proclaiming religious days and holidays. And he responded with basically the language where we hear church, a wall between church and state. That was the language in the letter that Jefferson used. So the court used that letter in a sense to rationalize the intention of the Establishment Clause. So while some strict interpretationalists might say an establishment of religion means just that, like in 1830 in Massachusetts, when Massachusetts was like officially a congregationalist, established religious state, to the idea of, can I pass a law saying that we're going to say a prayer, in school? So loose interpretationalists have used the Establishment Clause intention of Jefferson and this wall between church and state to build it up pretty high. So the Free Exercise Clause, guys, basically is freedom of religion. And the court has basically adopted in kind of deciding what the language means of a strict scrutiny test. So if we're going to take away your freedom of religion, your free exercise of religion, we better have a really good reason. Like you belong to the Church of Meth. I don't think that's going to pass the mustard. I think that the strict scrutiny test would include you. You're not allowed to do that. So next is free speech, guys. Congress shall make no law abridging free speech. There's always going to be a balancing act, but there's tons of different areas of study in this, whether you're talking about student free speech or free speech during war, commercial free speech, is flag burning free speech, is obscenity free speech. There's so much interesting stuff to take a look at. You certainly probably should do that. But that would be your freedom of speech. We then have or of the press, abridging the press rights. And of course, this really goes to the idea of prior restraint. Can the federal government stop you from printing something because they deem it to be hazardous or a security risk? And that's going to be a balancing act as well. Take a look at New York Times versus the United States, a famous case dealing with the Pentagon Papers, and the idea of whether we had the right to know of whether the government was lying to us or whether that was going to violate national security. You can look at the WikiLeaks case today, or what Snowden is doing with information from the NSA. too hot to handle. There's tons in there to do. You also are going to have the right of the people to peacefully assemble. This is right of assembly. This also goes to the idea of right of association. What if you join the Communist Party in the 1950s? Are you going to have the right to assemble? What if you want to get 1,000 friends to go downtown and have a march in front of city halls to free the puppy dogs? Do you need a petition? Lots of cool and interesting stuff looking at that. And then finally, not to abridge the right of petitioning the government for a redress of grievances. Your ability as a citizen to lobby your government, to tell the government through protest or letter writing or raising money or however it might be, to address your grievances, your problems from the government. So there you go, guys. 44 words, you can do that. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of the speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble and petition their government for a redress of grievances. Boom, 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 boom. Where attention goes, energy flows. Make sure you check out other videos down below in the descriptions. We have other channels you should be checking out, and check us out on the Twitters @ItHughes. There you go, guys. Stick a fork in me. I'm done. Yay for learning.
Thank you. And yes, that is the point that is getting out. And that is the point you got to realize. And the gentleman has a lot of good videos. I've been watching his videos off and on for a while. And the only reason why I played it, because the way he said it, it has to be the separation of church and state. That's what the Congress intended. Your founding fathers intended it to be that way. Because they didn't want religion as running this country. Because remember, they left England, that is a terrorizing structure. They lived it. They already went through it. They know it. So when these men and women out there are protecting your rights, listen to these men and women. And also, too, while you're listening to them, protect yourself by doing your research. When you see the laws up there that have passed, the congressional records that have passed, when you see court cases that are real, all right, use them. That's their rules, their regulations. Like we say, they wrote it, we quote it. So when we say that they wrote it, we quote it, we're using their words because they have to go by it. You don't have to go by all their administrative rules because that's a private corporation. I mean, even we've got the deals that we're going to be posting up with some of the sheriff's department that actually has it listed that they are personally a private corporation themselves by their own websites, claim that they're a private corporation. So that is a federal crime as well because I don't have the law in front of me, and I'll pull it up here in just a second, and I'll bring that administrative rule back up. But this is the one thing that when you're doing this stuff, learn. Don't be afraid. I mean, it's like the Ninth Circuit Court says a warrant has to be issued before a child can be taken in custody. And it states clearly, a lawful warrant, not a legal warrant. So it's comprehending what the words mean compared to what we're led to believe they mean. And once we start comprehending what they really mean compared to what we think they mean, that's where we're making the changes to the children. That's where we're proving the structure that brings the facts into the circumstances. And so when you're talking facts, not hearsay, because that's why I say the Constitution is the law of the land. That's why I say in my Bible is the Constitution and the treaties of the Native Americans that wrote the damn thing. And they wrote it to protect them from the foreign invaders, the Spaniards, the British, the foreign invaders. And see, that's the one thing that when you start realizing that all that comes down to foreign invasion from these men and women, now you're catching on. Now you're getting this reality. And that's what's going to protect you and your children. And that's if you're a legal immigrant, too, knowing how to write this stuff up, protecting your bloodline. So when they become lawful, they have the rights instilled because you made sure they had their rights, not privileges. And that's what we want to make sure that you have the knowledge to protect yourself, lawful or legal. Lawful is bloodline American, native, and legal is citizens. And when a public servant asks you if you're a citizen and you claim to be a citizen, well, I'm sorry. Because if you're claiming to be a citizen, that means you don't have rights. Read the law. We provide that information of the law to you folks. So we want to make sure that you comprehend what the First Amendment means, what it really means compared to what people claim it means. And you always hear the Democrats will tell all immigrants they have all these rights, and the 14th Amendment protects you if you're an immigrant. And I've literally argued with men and women about that fact. And then I prove it to them, and then they still don't want to believe it. Because the 14th Amendment does not protect immigrants unless they're paying their taxes and following the administrative rules. If they're following the administrative rules, they have protection. And that is our responsibility, the lawful Native Americans, bloodline Native Americans, to protect their rights. Because if we don't protect their rights, how do we expect them to protect our rights? I mean, on the internet, I'm going through this structure where, you know, these immigrants, and they got this one guy that's out there, he's a Muslim, and he's in the Army or Marines, and he's saying all this wonderful stuff, and everybody's going, no, you might be a Marine. You technically shouldn't even be in that because, you know, the Marines were, and the Navy was formed to go after Muslims. And that was the one thing, Muslims don't have freedom of religion, and that goes back to Thomas Jefferson. It's like reading the real truth compared to what we're led to believe. And a lot of us are led to believe these crazy ideas, these crazy structures. And so when we're going down this path and these crazy structures and these crazy things, we're deluding our children of the facts, truth, in their own mind. And that's what the Democrats are doing right now. You know, you've been watching it on the news where the Democrats are going after these things, or saying that these men and women have all these rights and privileges. And then some of these Democrats have even stated on national news that immigration has more rights than the native people. And it's like these people, I wonder what kind of drugs they are really on. We do have elected and public employees that are on psychological drugs. And in the Constitution, it says if you're on mind-altering drugs, administrative rules, if you're on mind-altering drugs, you cannot be in office at all. I know, I've filed it on a couple of them. And these people won't respond. They're freaking out because they know they're being caught with their dirty laundry hanging out in the wind. And so that's the one thing that when it comes down to what we're bringing out to the general public here. And so when you have a right versus a privilege, it's knowing how to protect that right and knowing how to protect the privilege. And so when we work together on these things, and we truly are working together on this, a lot of us are putting it together. We're putting things together. The groups are starting to come together from other groups. They're listening more and more. And that is the one thing that really comes down to when you start listening to the truth, you start protecting yourself. That's how we're going to have the winning circumstances. And once the natives start protecting themselves, then that way we're going to win. But you got to remember, the democracy, the Democrats don't want you to win. Because, see, the Democrats make a living off of depression. The Democrats make a living off of the confusion out there because they got us arguing with one another, fighting one another, and they know it. They do it deliberately. And remember, they spent billions of taxpayers' dollars on the psychological circumstances of these things. And I mean the psychological because they do this because how many people have gone out and done a phone survey? How many people walk down the street and done a survey? See, that's the one thing people don't realize, how these surveys are to be used against you, not for you, as these other people will tell you. And that's the truth. They use it against you. They use the Constitution against you. They do guilt complexes. Oh, we need to pay all these colored people for being slaves for the 1850s and up. Well, excuse you. What do you mean? Don't forget, the Irish were slaves. The Indians were slaves. This is before the British were bringing the slaves over from England and from Africa. Go ahead. Yeah. And that is the one thing. Oh, I'm deserving this. No, you are not deserving it. And I have to agree with you on that. Because everybody wants a free handout. And that's the problem with what we're living today in this country. Everybody wants a free handout. And so when everybody gets a free handout, I mean, that's what Obama did when he allowed, 30 million illegals in this country. 30 million. And you figure in the last 12 years of all this stuff going on, how many babies have they had? How many of them are on welfare? And remember, technically welfare, and if you actually read the structure, there technically is no such thing as welfare, but when it was originally put in place, it was for the natives, the lawful people of this country, not for foreigners. Foreigners don't have rights. They have privileges. And so that's the one thing that comes down. When you have a freedom of religion, and then technically when the gentleman was talking, and I've said this dozens of times, well, actually hundreds of times, where the Constitution says freedom for religion. You know, and I always say also, too, both of those, freedom for and from. Because I don't believe in the structure of foreign governments. I don't believe in foreign religion that's on this soil here, because that came from another country that we're being dictated to on how to live, how to sit there and dictate to the children how to be lied to be controlled. They do it in schools, you know, and they keep saying, well, they have freedom to let these fire engines and cops go to these schools and, you know, talk to the kids. And no, they don't. Public servants don't have rights. They have privileges. They have a Constitution oath, and their obligation is to we the people. And like I said, what is it, the First Amendment? Because we have 3 legislative branches, and the first is not a legislative branch, it's we the people. We the people are the government. We're the first branch of government. The government was formed by we the people to protect we the people. So that way we couldn't be assaulted and kidnapped and shot at and go through all these things that we are not supposed to be going through. We're not supposed to be living this hell. And so by us living this hell, by lying to ourselves and our children and watching these programs that are doing it and sitting there and telling everybody, well, I mean, that's the one thing that disturbs me with all these religious channels. You know, and then they play it, you know, on the regular TVs late at night, and we're supposed to conform. We're supposed to have a guilt because of religion. Sorry, hate to tell you, it don't work that way. At least not for me. I can give a darn about their thoughts and their religion when it comes down to it. Because their religion is not my religion. Their religion is foreign, not American. And so once we comprehend that these foreign religions are doing this stuff to we the people, we are the ones that are paying the price. We are the ones that are, paying it one way or the other by physical abuse, mental abuse by our elected and public servants. And so when we're not playing this game and we're protecting the children, that's how we're going to win. That's where we're winning. And so we are succeeding in this. So when you hear somebody says that you have the right of freedom of speech, you do. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden that you have a freedom of speech and it's regulated because if you say certain words, you are to be punished. No, that's not true. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. And the liability for what you're saying. And that's the one thing that people need to realize, that they are liable for their actions. And so once you're liable for your actions, you can say anything you want. And then if somebody brings it up on you and comes after you, then you're liable. But that's your responsibility, your liability. So when you start doing the liability on these things and you start being responsible, when you file your affidavits, you're responsible and liable for your actions. And so because of your responsibility and liability, you have rights. See, that's what gives a man and a woman rights. It's called responsibility. You can't sit there and go, well, I was drunk and drugged up and I didn't know what I was doing, and so I need to be forgiven and I shouldn't go to jail for harming somebody or causing somebody personal or property damage. No. Sorry to say goodbye. But that depends on the injured party. Because I believe that the injured party has the right to claim and state the damages that should be done, or what you owe them for the damages that you caused them. And if they want to forgive you, that's up to the injured party, not a judge. Judge has nothing to do. The injured party has the right to say that. The injured party has the right of their religious and freedom of speech belief to do that. So when you get that point where they have the right to do this, and they have the right to do this and stand up for these things, then you start winning. It's that simple. And we all start winning. Because, I mean, come on, when we all grew up, I mean, if you're at least over 45, 40 years old, I mean, we all know what was taken out of context. We all know what was said to us growing up. We all know the lies that were portrayed on us. I mean, it's like I said, I don't believe in religion. When I started going in and researching the Bible and I started realizing more and more and more had nothing to do with what we're living today, and most of it was on guilt complex, making you feel guilty if you didn't do this or if you didn't do that. That's not what religion is about. Not to make you feel guilty. It's having faith, having belief in what you are trying to do. Faith, not guilt. And so when these people try to put guilt on you, especially, of course I hammer the Democratic Party because they have no rights in this country. They don't have rights in this country. This is a Republican form of government that was formed by the Constitution, not by democracy. And if you actually do the research on democracy, anybody that had democracy always fell down, went bankrupt, lost everything. Democracy doesn't work. That's like with Nazi Germany in World War II. And if you watch the symbols that they had, that the Nazis used to fly all the time on their flags and stuff. And then you look at the Vatican and the Pope's robe and your pastor's robe, if they actually have the one from England, they'll all have the Nazi symbols. And the Nazi symbols on the Pope's robe were way done in the 14th century. So, and don't forget, the Christianity in the Vatican supported Germany that was executing the people. See, that's what stuns me when people have the freedom of speech and we're being told that we don't have that right of freedom of speech. We are being told that, oh, you said a bad word because I didn't like it. Who is I? Who cares what I says? So long as that the Constitution applies to your words. You are liable for your actions. Your words spoke out. So that's what you need to do, is speak for your words. And once people start comprehending that for their own personal responsibility, their own liability, we start making real changes. And it is true, we do make real changes on this stuff. And so by making the changes, we know that people are starting to comprehend it. They know people are really getting it. They know people are really starting to stand up. People are really doing these things. So because of all that, that's how we're winning. That's how you're winning. That's how you're protecting your children. And so that's the whole point, is protecting thy children. Because if you don't protect your bloodline, who's responsible for that not protecting their bloodline? You. And so when you are protecting your bloodline, you're making changes. You are protecting the Constitution. You are protecting your rights of free speech. You are protecting your rights of freedom of religion, or for religion, or from. And then it's the intent. It's the intent of the people that wrote this stuff, because remember, the forefathers came from England. They already lived through the hell of religion. But when they came here, they realized they couldn't shove their religion down, and they still wanted to believe in their religion. Some of them did. And the other way is that they knew the natives didn't believe in that crap. The natives had their own religious belief. And because of their own religious belief, was supposed to be superior than the others. But then again, they agreed on freedom for religion. So because of that statement, we have freedom for religion. And so that's how we're able to protect ourselves. Because that way you cannot go to prison or jail for saying something like the British wanted us to go to jail and to sit there and be tormented by all this stuff. That's why we fought the British. We didn't want taxations. We didn't want to be enslaved. We knew better. We got it. And so because of what we got, that is the point that has saved us. Our forefathers saved us not only from ourselves, but from their homeland, their country of Britain. And they knew this. So when you hear these things from these men and women that technically don't know what they're talking about, that is the one thing, is to protect you. And these men and women knew that when they wrote the Constitution to protect themselves and us, the lawful bloodline of natives. That's why the Constitution, the treaties supersede every Constitution. There's dozens and dozens of court cases going back on that. Because the treaties supersede the Constitution, because the treaties were based off of the Constitution to protect the natives and the foreigners at the time. And that's the other thing that gets to me on immigration. People say, I have this right because I'm an immigrant. 1774, before we went to war, the original immigration law See, that's what always stuns me. People don't read this stuff. They want to go by how they're able to basically rape, rob, and pillage from us inside our own country. That's like the federal debt note is a criminal activity to use it, technically. So technically, by House Resolution 192, we're not supposed to be paying for this crap. But we're getting so convinced of it that we have to pay instead of doing that. It's like my First Amendment right when I passed this stuff out to the general public, dealing with you don't need a lawyer, you don't need an attorney. The courts are free. I send people the federal laws of what the court says. And that's the one thing that you need to realize, that the courts have already decided this stuff based off the Constitution. And so when we do this stuff and we protect the Constitution, we save ourselves. And that is the major, major deal of that. See, that is the one thing that you need to stand up on these issues. And so when you start standing up to protect your religious belief, your constitutional belief, your freedom of rights of speech belief. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things I don't like when kids yell, swear and cuss and do all that stuff. But I can't go against them because the main part about that one is it's their parents' responsibility. You know, I could yell at them and tell them I don't believe in what they're saying and they're bullshitting and all this stuff. But it's their parents' responsibility. It's not the village's responsibility. It does not take a village to raise a child. And when it comes down to it, you're supposed to be able to go out in the woods, hunt and fish. And so anyhow, when it comes down to it, we're going to open up the floor for thoughts because, I mean, we got into it. I've said my thing, and I like to hear from others, their thoughts, and how they would like to handle things or what they believe should be brought out. So anyhow, why don't we open up the floor? Oh, no.
All participants are unmuted.
I was having patience. So the floor is open. And so what do you think? Do you have a right? Do you have a responsibility? Is your religion protected? Go ahead.
May I?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, I got a little question for you. I'm just wondering, is a government employee paid holiday, Christmas, a religious holiday in violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution?
Yes.
See, we got a problem right there. Big problem. That's all I got to say. I mean, this is volumes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one, and it is. And why are they getting paid on their holiday when the average man and woman worker doesn't get paid on that holiday? And especially if you're the entertainment, restaurant, hosting business.
Well, why is it a religious holiday to start with?
It's what?
Why is it a religious holiday to start with?
Well, but that's what they keep trying to put their religion down our throats. We have to believe in their religion.
It's all bogus.
One at a time, please. Go ahead, finish what you're saying, and then the next speaker will go.
Yeah, we have that problem with this administrative fourth branch of government. But that's all I had to say about Christmas for now. It's just volumes. And the earlier speaker that you got the YouTube on, he should have covered that. And he jumped over it. Never said a word about it. And it should be obvious. That's all.
The other point is that probably he didn't think about it, too. So I have to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
But I'll give the benefit of the doubt, but that's something that has to be brought up. Go ahead, the other one. Go ahead, producer. Yes. Yeah, true. And that started from Macy's department store downtown London, 1841.
Yeah, but may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's still in the name of money, control, power, and it's still a violation of the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the problem that we have with these public servants. You know, they think they have a right to paid holidays. Well, what about the men and women who are working? How come they personally went after us when I was in the hospitality industry? They went after us and took away our time and a half or double or triple time pay when we used to get that. They went after and taking overtime away for people in that industry. Completely took it away. And so that's what disturbs the hell out of me when they sat there and take this stuff away from us. But then again, they get the pay, and if they work that day, they usually get the triple pay. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. No, valid point. I agree with that one. And that's what we are living right now today on this stuff. And so that is the point. You know, it's so frustrating that these men and women do what they're doing to us, tormenting us, destroying us for their own personal financial gain. And everybody wants to blame the Rothschilds and stuff. No, you can't blame them. They're just smart because you're stupid. You go along with it. You pay this stuff. See, that's the one thing. You can't blame somebody that's making a buck when it comes down to it, because you all do it. We all do it. So that's the frustration we're living. We want to blame somebody for what you're doing. Oh, that's right. They set it up so we could do it that way, and so that way we're supposed to have guilt over it because they set it up for that purpose. So we're going to blame them because most of us enjoy that extra day if we get it off, even though it's not paid. So those are the things that we've got to take in consideration when these things are happening like that. So how do you stop it? That's the one thing. Well, you need to put administrative rules in. Or the other way that a couple states have even got the local courts out of their cities is what do? They put it on the ballot. So they let the community vote, and there are communities that actually voted the local police department and the jails out of their cities. They have actually done that. So that's the one thing that men and women need to pay attention to, that structure of what these other men and women have done across our country to get rid of these domestic terrorists out of our country. Because police are only supposed to arrest code breakers, and if you actually read their own contracts, code breakers actually mean elected and public servants, registered church members, and anybody who complies with our system. And that's the one thing. I don't comply. I make it publicly known. I do it on this education show. I do it on the disclaimers. Every talk show I've been on for the last 10 plus years, I've done that, brought it out, went out and stated these facts. And so it's, like I said, I keep saying it's our responsibility. And I've been told this by federal judges. I've been told this by congressmen and senators. And people will always say, well, how come House Resolution 192 is not applied? Well, everybody wants a job. And so these men and women have definitely made it clear to me, you want employment, so why should we give you the other? Basically, people want to be a slave. So why are they entitled to have freedom if they don't want freedom? I need to go have a job. Well, how come you're not building your home, working together with your neighbors? How come you're not collecting, rainwater? How come you're not hunting and fishing? Skinning your deer and elk, bartering that stuff for the structure that it used to do with the old trading post. And remember, go ahead.
Yeah. Along with these illegal immigrants who are complaining and jumping up and down and screaming about DACA and using ACLU to readdress grievances with the government, do they even have I don't think they have a right, but am I correct on this?
Yeah, you are correct. Hang on a second, get some water. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. They are getting away with it. They are abusing our federal court system under Article 3. They are going by Article 1, administrative legislative courts. And that's the one thing that legislative courts are only supposed to be done for elected and public servants. They're not supposed to include immigration. Immigration don't have rights. And if you've noticed on the internet and Facebook, you've got a lot of these named people, financial directors and all this stuff have been running their programs out there for 20 plus years. Now they're starting to speak out on immigration, and they're bringing up the administrative rules and laws that these people don't have rights. And they're shocking me because, some of this stuff I've sent them over the years and proven this stuff. And sometimes I got a reply that, that's interesting. Or I don't get a response, and now you're starting to see it coming up. And the ACLU, so let me tell you, I've been to the ACLU. I've spoken with the director. I have spoken with the director here in Portland as well, dealing with my own case with the cops, what they did to me. And they said, we can't do that. We can't touch that. And I even had two attorneys that were the ones who set up the appointment with the director of the ALCU up here in Portland. And next thing you know, we can't touch that. We're not going to deal with that. And then after that, when I started making some waves on it, then they put a new director in. And that's how they solve what they call their problems, is appointing somebody else in that position. And so these guys don't have these rights. And so that's the whole point when we put out these administrative rules. They wrote it, we quote it. So that's why we put them out. So that way you guys have the administrative rules in your hands, not hearsay. Because hearsay is not admissible, and you wouldn't accept hearsay in your own home, especially when your kid is bullshitting and lying to you and expect you to buy the hearsay lie. It ain't going to fly. You know that. We all been there, even when we were kids. See, that hasn't changed over the generations. When we got caught in a big lie or done something like that, we usually got our ass whipped. And then today, oh my God, you can't spank your kid. I was at the grocery store, it had been, I think about a year and a half ago. This kid was having such a fit. He was like 7, 8 years old, having such a fit, embarrassing the hell out of his mom. So his mom turned the kid around and gave the kid a couple of whacks on the ass, and the kid snapped right out of it, straightened up, and looking around, and this lady's, I'm going to call the cops on you. And I looked at that woman. I said, you do that, I'll file an affidavit on you for making a false police report. I guarantee you'll spend a minimum 10 days in jail for it. And she goes, you can't do that. She assaulted and harmed that child. I said, no, she did not. She is the parent. She is the owner of that child, and she has the right. Do you have children? And that's when she turned around and walked away. So that just told me she spanks her children, but she's willing to do that. And that's the scary thing about elected and public service when they're in the public, because they make false police reports on us. I've had elected and public employees make false police reports on me. I get pulled over, and of course I knew who did it when they drove by me and what the circumstances were. And that is the one thing that these guys protect their own. That's how they keep their budgets intact. And that's why we want to make sure that their budgets do fall. And that's one thing that if you are paying attention to Donald Trump, he is doing that. I mean, he's cutting foreign aid left and right around the world. And the Democrats and the ACLU is bitching about that. And it's like, it's not our responsibility to save the world. I don't give a goddamn thing what the fucking Pope says. Excuse my language. You know, but we are not the world. The Pope don't own us. The Queen don't own us. We are not British England anymore. Remember, we succeeded from England. We didn't want their control. We didn't want their religion. We didn't want their taxes. And so they slid the taxes on us realistically, and that started back in 1940 when they were starting to set the taxes on us. And then it wasn't until the basic heavy structure in 1990 when everybody started saying, well, we all have to pay taxes. You know, nobody's exempt from taxes. Prior to that, the average American, most people didn't pay taxes. There's a lot of Americans today who still don't pay taxes, too. I've never participated in a voluntary tax system, and it actually states it on the tax form. It's voluntary, and if you actually read the tax form, most tax forms will have it say it's a gift to the Queen in the Vatican. And so that's the one thing. And so either you have freedom of religion and freedom of speech separated, because in England, just in the mainstream media, 2 people got arrested for freedom of speech in England. They were saying, you don't have that right to speak like that here in this country. And they're trying to quote, we have freedom of religion, we have freedom of speech. Not in England, you don't. And that's what they're doing to us in our country. They're doing these British administrative legislative rules. Remember, Congress is out of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is owned by the Vatican.
Oh, it's not.
Well, you have the thing on that, but also, too, I have the paperwork going back. It was supposed to be separated and exceeded. What year would you say that was? I thought you had that on top of your head. Okay. Well, we'll get that one out. But see, when you go through it and look at the structure, that's the one thing that we have to protect. Your rights, your great-grandchildren's rights, your grandchildren's rights, and your great, and your next 100 generations of your children on this soil. See, we have to do this. We have to protect it. Our public employees right now are doing what technically the sheriffs used to do in England. And I've got a court case where one of the states that stated that the sheriffs has no rights whatsoever to arrest or do anything. Their job is to monitor the courtrooms only. But if they're out there taking a Constitution oath to protect us, that was the affidavit that I publicly put out. And I'm waiting for their responses on how they expect this to be paid, because they want to charge me on the average $52.50 an hour and up. And so I want to see what their response is, how they expect me to be paid. And then once I get those emails back, I will, when I do my emails back to them, we'll make those public. And you can see what the law says about using federal debt notes and how the structure is based off the 1933 Banking Act. And it even states in that structure that elected and public employees are to pay taxes. And that's the one thing, it's a fact. I have proven it through the House and Senate and through the Superior Court. Send them the information, and then we watch the changes. It's like the immigration changes. All of a sudden you watch the courts, the Ninth Circuit Court, and everybody changing their decision, going, yes, the president has authority not to allow people from other countries into this country. And like I said, with the USC 1182. So people got to read these administrative rules that are based off of the Constitution, that are based to protect us. See, freedom of religion comes to where you don't have to worry about saying things. And that's what we're supposed to be, not afraid to say things. We're not supposed to be afraid of our own shadows. We're supposed to be, I mean, it's like, how many times have you sat there and watched your neighbors yell and scream at each other? And then somebody calls the cops, and the cops show up and say, well, somebody's got to go to jail. You disturbed the peace. Wait a minute, whose peace did they disturb? When did volume become a disturbance of a peace because of volume of their own freedom? I mean, these are just thoughts that, come to mind, and thoughts that people think about and bring up. So it is bringing up these thoughts. It is bringing out the structure on these things of what, why, and how. And so when we start doing that and people challenge it, I like the challenges. It's like that video. I mean, and sometimes people don't think about it. I'd much rather give them the credit that they didn't think about that. And then when I do get contact with them, I'll bring it up to them. And then once that's brought up to them, then after that, then we know that they're, covering up for the structure of their employment. And that is the one thing people need to pay attention about, the employment of these public employees, their brothers, sisters, cousins, because remember, they all work in unison to make a living, because their living is more important than your freedom. And that's the way these men and women honestly think. If you've been around law enforcement or politics for a number of years, you start really realizing and looking at the way these people truly think compared to what we think they think. And so that is the best part about passing lawful information, administrative rules back and forth, putting it together, talking about these things, bringing up, and when a man or woman is wrong, admit when they're wrong. Don't sit there and try to keep covering it up. Because I've had to choke on a few words of my own off and on, and there's a couple of you actually know that. But I'm not sitting there going, oh, shit, no, I have to go, okay, shit, I made a mistake. I have to be honest not only with myself first, but with the other man or woman. So when I have the evidence, I can't argue with it. If I do, I'm sort of stupid. And I don't like embarrassing myself, because when you look in the mirror, you still have to deal with yourself when you look in the mirror. So that is the one thing we all have to deal with. So anybody else would like to speak up or anything? The floor is still open. Well, all right. Well, I guess we got the concept. We get down to the freedom of speech and religion, that your religion is your religion. Your freedom of speech is all of ours, because your religion is not my religion, but your freedom of speech is, and I have to protect that, as well as I have to protect your freedom of religion, so long as that you're not trying to dictate to me how to think and live your religion. Yeah, and like I said, my religion, and I preach all the time, is the Constitution. Because I'd much rather have that religion, because that religion actually has rights. It doesn't have the guilt, the parties, concepts of what they do. Because if we want to go back religion, if you actually go back, even Christian religion, Christians, they sacrificed themselves. They murdered each other in the name of religion. Oh, no, we can't forget how they did that to what they thought were witches. I mean, if people didn't agree with the Pope back then, they called him a witch or a warlock. That's how they got away with it. They classified them as demons. That's how they got away with the crucifixions of so many people. Cutting them apart, pain and anguish and all this stuff because of what they thought their belief was superior to yours. So when it comes down to it, your right is your right. And when it comes down to it, the Constitution is all of our lawful bloodline and Native Americans' rights. And our right is to protect the immigration that comes in this country, so long as they're following the administrative rules that are there for them and for us. It's like everybody keeps saying that these people pay taxes and they pay Social Security. Well, technically, they're not supposed to pay Social Security, period. That's where people don't get it. And technically, if you do the history in every other country, because most countries in the world don't allow you in their country unless you have the income to live in their country, not to get a job. And so that's the one thing that we do backwards. That's the one thing that we get penalized and punished for ourselves, because we take away our own employment. Because, I mean, when I was a kid, I started working. I went out and earned my clothes. I went out and earned my bikes, except for a couple that were gifted to me by family members. But we all went out and earned our stuff. We figured out a way to come up with things. And so when these immigrants are out here taking away our employment from our children and stuff, because I agree that children should be working out there and learning this structure at a young age, so they get to learn business, so they get to learn responsibility. They get to learn how to deal with the general people in their neighborhoods of what's going on. I mean, a lot of us, I used to deliver 1,300 papers a month. I used to, what was that, 1,300, that was about right, more than that. But also, too, I had my own landscaping business at 14 years old. So but of course, I never had business licenses. I never had insurance back then, because I knew if I got injured, I was liable. I couldn't go sue the landowner, because I'm working on the land. I can't blame them. That's the one thing that, you need to have insurance to insure if somebody else comes on your property. Well, you come on somebody's property, it's your responsibility. That's why public land, the cities and counties and public parks and the forest are insured by the National Insurance Fund. They are insured. And that's the one thing that we got to realize. Even like when you register your vehicle, you're still paying an uninsured motorist fund in your registration that you're not supposed to be paying insurance. I mean, I know that for a fact. I've got videos with me discussing this and proving it through Oregon State Legislative and Senate. So, and that's, that's my freedom of religion right there, going after them, because the Constitution, I claim, is my religion. It's my Bible. Because without that Bible, I don't have rights. That's the way I look at it. So, anyhow, I don't want to continue rambling in the air tonight. If anybody's got anything to add, we'll see if anybody's got anything to add. Go ahead, if anybody would like to speak. Okay. So next Sunday night, we're going to go over the Second Amendment. And that's going to be an interesting topic. I've got some things I want to bring up on that. And the one thing is, with the Second Amendment, people would tell you, they didn't have machine guns back then, 1725. Look at a thing called the... Go ahead. Oh, thank you for the correction. But they did have machine gun back then. And if you want to be technical, let's say the long rifle back there, the Kentucky long rifle, hey, that was considered an assault weapon, even though it was one shot. Because, you can take that long rifle and beat the hell out of somebody with that long rifle. That's an assault. See, they come up with these names that are just so ridiculous to the average man or woman who comprehends what a real assault means compared to the psychological trauma they want to do to children and uneducated men and women. So we'll be hitting the Second Amendment next week. And like I said, we'll be doing every amendment until we get through all 27. what, why, and how they were put in place, the circumstances of them. And so we appreciate you joining us this evening. We enjoy passing on knowledge and education from all the ones that work with us and give us guidance and gives us further education. And so when we get the further education, we pass it on. And so, don't forget, we have Facebook sites, the United States for America, Republic, Elected and Public Servants Oversights. We have New Organ Trackers. We have Recall Cape Brown. And we do have the Civil War 1866 Lawful Bloodline Americans. And so, and the new .organ Trackers has a lot of information. The Facebook page, I post as much as I can to keep it fresh with things all the time. And so you can always send information. But with the Facebook sites, we do not, once in a blue moon or once in a great wall, I might put something up religion, but 85 to 99% of the time, I do not put religious stuff on the, basically any of the sites, because they're not designed for religion. They're designed for education from the Constitution and from the House and Senate congressional records, because we want to make sure those are publicized, and we do put up news media that's around that we get, depends on the news stories. So with that, I will say, may the Great Spirit bless you. May Mother clothe and feed you and bring you life. And may the Creator look over all of us. Oh, you forgot. Mom, I need you to cook my dinner. Yeah.